Algeria International, you will not miss a single major political or economic event. Radio Algeria International, our voice in the world.
This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
Diplomacy Chief Ahmed Attaf has stressed the necessity to achieve the main mechanism in charge of organizing Algeria-EU relations during a phone call with the High Representatives for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Kaya Kallas. Algeria has reaffirmed that justice and accountability are essential foundations on which the resolution of the conflict in Sudan must be based. As UNRWA called for an end to the atrocities perpetrated in Gaza, at least 16 Palestinians were killed in Israeli airstrikes against a displacement camp in the central town of Deir el-Balah. Those were the headlines, and now the news in detail from Radio Algeria International. Good afternoon. First in our news, the State Minister in charge of Foreign Affairs and African Affairs, Ahmed Attaf, has received a phone call from the High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, Kaya Kallas. The talk centered on the reality and prospects of partnership relations between Algeria and the EU in the framework of the bilateral partnership agreement signed between the two sides, as well as the multilateral partnership that includes other countries of the southern shore of the Mediterranean. Mr. Attaf stressed in this respect the necessity to activate the main mechanism in charge of organizing Algeria-EU relations represented by the Partnership Council, which remains the best framework to address all the issues of common interest. The two sides also exchanged views on the draft of the Charter for the Mediterranean, which is under discussion between the EU and the countries of the southern shore of the Mediterranean. Finally, the two sides agreed to strengthen efforts aimed at striking a balance in the economic partnership linking Algeria with the EU in a way that guarantees the interests of both parties and contributes to peace, security, and sustainable development in the Euro-Mediterranean space. Algeria has reaffirmed through the voice of its Deputy Permanent Representative to the United Nations, Toufiq El-Eid Koudri, that justice and accountability are essential foundations on which the resolution of conflict in Sudan must be based. More details with our colleague Mariam Bershi.
Speaking following the presentation by the Deputy Prosecutor of the ICC's biannual report on the situation in Darfur in western Sudan, the Algerian diplomat stated that in light of developments in the Darfur region, particularly since the beginning of the current conflict more than 2 years ago, justice and accountability remained essential foundations on which any comprehensive resolution to this conflict must be based. Achieving this objective, he added, also requires establishing solid foundations for partnership and cooperation with international and regional actors, welcoming in this regard the cooperation of the Sudanese government with the Office of the Prosecutor and other relevant bodies. Mr. Koudri also commended the efforts made by the Sudanese government to implement the national plan for the protection of civilians, which is based in particular on the principle of the rule of law and human rights as essential foundation. He emphasized in his speech that it was equally essential to rely on the frameworks available at the national and regional levels to achieve the objectives set, particularly in terms of accountability, within a framework led by the Sudanese themselves, stressing that the Juba Peace Agreement and the structures of the African Union AU constitute two fundamental components, allowing for the development of appropriate mechanisms capable of working out lasting solutions. The Algerian diplomat warned against any foreign interference in Sudan's internal affairs, condemning external support for the perpetrators of various violations and crimes against civilians in Darfur.
External support for the perpetrators of various violations and crimes against civilians in Darfur is a direct factor in the continuation of the current situation. Therefore, we call once again for an end to all forms of foreign interference in Sudan and to solemnly and firmly condemn it, as it is a direct enabler of these violations.
Meanwhile, Mr. Kudri stressed that the Rapid Support Forces' failure to comply with Resolution 2736 by maintaining the siege imposed on the city of El Fasher, where hundreds of thousands of defenseless civilians living in catastrophic humanitarian conditions constituted a concrete case that must be rigorously examined. He added that the crimes were perpetrated against humanitarian workers and attacks on civilian infrastructure, particularly hospitals, represent serious violations that can be qualified as war crimes, hence the need to prosecute their perpetrators.
عدم امتثال قوات الدعم السريع للقرار 2736.
The failure of the Rapid Support Forces to comply with Resolution 2736 to this day by continuing the blockade on the city of El Fasher, where hundreds of thousands of civilians live in a catastrophic humanitarian situation, is considered a tangible case that must be examined with firmness. The same applies to the crimes committed against humanitarian workers and civilian infrastructure, especially hospitals, which are considered serious violations that amount to war crimes. Therefore, accountability must include the perpetrators of these crimes.
At the end of his speech, Mr. Kudri reiterated Algeria's call to prioritize dialogue over violence with a view to a lasting resolution of the conflict between the Sudanese brothers, expressing in this regard Algeria's full support for the efforts made by the African Union and the United Nations.
And the 24th edition of the International Tourism and Travel Fair, CITAF, kicks off today at the Pas Maritime Exhibition Hall here in Algiers. To find out more, let's follow this report by our colleague Marine Barchi.
The fair offers the opportunity to promote Algeria as a tourist destination and highlight the contribution of tourism to supporting the national economy. The International Fair, which will run until the 15th of this month under the slogan "Travel to the Heart of Algeria and Enjoy Authentic Tourism and a 1,000-year-old Civilization," is the most important tourism event in Algeria, being the leading platform for promoting Algeria as a tourist destination, notably Saharan tourism. The event is an annual gathering for communication and cooperation around the most important local and international tourist destinations, as well as contributing to strengthening the partnership between professionals and stakeholders. It will also highlight the contribution of the tourism sector to supporting the national economy as a strategic pillar of economic diversification through the activation, revitalization and development of tourism, in addition to encouraging domestic tourism.
Shifting now to the Middle East region, as UNRWA called for an end to the atrocities perpetrated in Gaza, at least 16 Palestinians were killed in Israeli airstrikes overnight against a displaced camp in the central town of Deir al-Balah. According to the news agency Wafa, several others were wounded in the Israeli attacks, which also hit the area of Al-Mawasi west of Khan Yunis, as well as Rafah in the southern part of the territory. This brought to 60 the number of Palestinians killed for the past 24 hours in the Israeli bombardments. This came as the General Commissioner of UNRWA, Filippo Lazzarini, has called for an end to be put to impunity, highlighting that 800 Palestinians had been killed while queuing for food. In a message posted on social networks, he reiterated his call for a ceasefire and for a lifting of the blockade imposed by the Israeli occupying authorities on Gaza. Meanwhile, Spain called for an immediate suspension of the association agreement concluded between the European Union and the Israeli occupying forces blamed for the genocide perpetrated in Gaza. Addressing Parliament, Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez criticized the Israeli occupying authorities for the crimes perpetrated against the Palestinians, saying such practices will remain in memories as the darkest chapters of the 21st century. He recalled that on February 2024, both Spain and Ireland had urged the European institutions to assess the Israeli occupying authorities' commitment to the partnership agreement's provisions. He underscored that there were enough evidence in the report made by the EU representative for Foreign and Security Affairs, Kaya Kayas, on February 23, 2024, that established the Israeli authorities' violation of the second provision of the agreement related to the respect of human rights. The Spanish premier went on to say that no one could ignore the founding principles of the European Union and weaponize starvation to prevent the legitimate state of Palestine from becoming a partner of the EU. In a similar move, scores of representatives of the British Labour Party called on their government to recognize the state of Palestine and to take measures to prevent the displacement of the Palestinian population by Israeli occupying authorities. And the government of the Canadian province of Manitoba has declared a state of emergency for the second time in 2025 due to more than 100 forest fires. Provincial Premier Wab Kinew announced that the main reason for the recent state of emergency is that the province needs access to more facilities to provide shelter for so many Manitoba residents. He had already declared a state of emergency in May when 2 people died in the fires and 30,000 others were forced to leave their homes. The New York Times reported that due to the rapid spread of the fire, the area burned could become the largest in 31 years. This year, the fire has already destroyed 1 million hectares of land. It should be noted that the situation is exacerbated by high temperatures in Canada, which usually occur from March to October. Most fires are caused by lightning. And meanwhile, in the United States, hundreds of tourists were evacuated from an area of the famous Grand Canyon site in the southwest of the country due to the rapid spreading of fire. The fire, which broke out on Thursday, has burned more than 3,500 hectares of bush near the north rim of the national park and was still out of control on Friday at midday. Last night, Grand Canyon staff safely evacuated about 500 visitors from the north rim due to the fire. All visitors have left the area, and park employees and residents remain confined to the site. Images provided by authorities show large columns of smoke rising above this scrubby desert. The south rim of the park, the most popular tourist destination, remains accessible. With its spectacular scenery, the Grand Canyon, a red-hued gorge carved out by the Colorado River, is one of the most visited tourist sites in the United States, attracting nearly 5 million visitors each year. And finally, a photo taken by an Algerian photographer has been ranked among the top 10 in the world Summit on the Information Society photo competition held in Geneva, Switzerland. The photo is the work of photographer Yassine Imadalou from the company Algérie Télécom. The announcement of the achievement took place in the presence of the Minister of Post and Telecommunications, Mr. Sid Ali Zarrouqi, who congratulated the photographer and expressed his pride in the distinction, which reflects the talent and creativity of young Algerians in various fields. The photo, entitled At the Summit of Connectivity, pays tribute to the technicians of Algérie Télécom and through them to all the operators for their efforts to ensure the continuity of telecommunication services throughout the national territory, notably during their work at high altitudes on relay antennas in sometimes extreme conditions. The competition saw the participation of hundreds of photos from different countries, highlighting the role of information and communication technologies in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. With this, we come to the end of this news bulletin for today. Time now for our weekly program with my colleague Jamal Slimani. As for me, I'll meet you again tomorrow for a fresh edition of our news bulletin. Until then, stay tuned to Radio Algeria International, and bye-bye for now.
Hello to your weekly program, Destination Algeria. I'm Jamal Semeni. There are a number of great destinations in Algeria that waiting to be discovered. A curious mixture of cultures and influences. Algeria has something interesting to see in just about every city. The country is also the first largest on the African continent, so you can be sure that there are plenty of towns and cities to visit. Let's visit Algeria's fascinating destinations, you and I, together. Amsel is a small town situated just south of Tamanrasset province. Tamanrasset, or Tamanrasset, is a province in southern Algeria, in the Ahagar Mountains. Tamanrasset is the chief city of the Algerian Tuareg. Very near to Amsel, you will find the huge Ahaggar Mountains, also known as the Hogar. They are situated in the middle of the Sahara Desert in the southern part of Algeria. The Ahaggar mountain region is mainly a rocky desert area with an average altitude of more than 900 meters above sea level. The highest peak, Tahat, is at 2,918 meters above sea level. A celebrated and especially visited point is the Askram, where Charles de Foucault lived in the summer of 1905. Amsel is a lovely destination for a day trip, and it is a wonderful retreat during the busy summer months. The town has a great reservoir, and swimming is allowed. The water of the reservoir is clean and clear and usually has a nice cool temperature. Amsel itself is very much a stranded town with very few attractions to see, but it's worthwhile to stroll around the shops for a bit of relaxation and bargain hunting. As long as you keep in mind that Amsel is a small village situated right in the middle of the Sahara Desert, you'll be fine. Amsel has a typical desert climate. It is very hot and sometimes unbearable in the summer. In sharp contrast, winter temperatures often fall well below 0 degrees Celsius. Rainfall is very rare and sporadic. However, since the climate is less extreme than most other areas of the Sahara, Amsel is a major location for biodiversity. Today, Amsel and Tamanrasset province is a prime tourist destination in Algeria. In the first part of our program, I mentioned the name Charles de Foucault. In the second part, we will tell you more about him with Mohamed Barazwan.
Forming part of the Ahaggar Mountains, also known as the Hogar Mountains in southern Algeria, the Askram is a spectacular collection of narrow mountain peaks in shades of brown and ochre, which have been artistically carved by the elements. This geological wonder attracts visitors from far and wide who are awestruck by its natural beauty. The Askram is also renowned for being the site of the hermitage of Charles de Foucault, which is now the retreat of Little Brothers of Jesus, who continue the humanitarian work he started back in 1910. Charles-Jean de Foucault was born into an aristocratic family in Strasbourg, France, on the 15th of September, 1858. He became a Trappist monk in 1890, left Morocco in 1897, and traveled to Algeria to live a life of ascetic solitude. He founded a hermitage in Beni Abbas, Algeria, and welcomed visitors regardless of their religion, social status, or ethnic origin. Later on, Charles de Foucauld moved to Tamanrasset in southern Algeria to be with the Tuareg people. He used the highest point of the Hagara Mountains, the Askram, as a place to establish his hermitage. He associated closely with the Tuareg for a period of more than 10 years, during which time he studied their cultural traditions and worked on a dictionary and the grammar of the Tuareg language. Charles de Foucauld died in 1916, just outside Tamanrasset. The dictionary was published in 4 volumes after his death, with rich and accurate descriptions. Charles de Foucauld was considered to be a martyr of the Catholic Church and was beatified by Pope Benedict XVI on the 13th of November 2005. Visitors to the Askram will not fail to agree with Charles de Foucauld, whose words are inscribed in a book of his writings at the Hermitage. Quote, "The beauty of the view defies description or even imagination. It is marvelous." Unquote.
Located in the Batna province here in Algiers, the Belezma National Park is considered to be one of the most important national parks in this vast biodiverse country. Created in 1984 and covering an area of more than 262 square kilometers, the climate in Belezma National Park ranges from a dry semi-arid climate to a cool sub-humid climate, creating a variety of habitats for an even greater variety of wildlife. Belezma National Park is home to more than 440 species of flora and in excess of 300 species of fauna, 59 of which have the status of being protected. The Cuvier's gazelle, for example, is one of the protected species in the Belezma National Park. It is believed that there are only approximately 2,000 of these beautiful endangered animals remaining in 8 northern African nature reserves, including the Belezma National Park.